Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pianist Academy. I'm Szczepanek. Good to see you, many of you, here for another live stream. Welcome. Rhodesy and Calais and Jess, Antonio, Alexis, hello, OCD King. Good to see you. Bedlington Groomer, Rob Harrington, Bethany. Welcome, everybody. There's more of you here than said hello in the chat, so if you didn't say hi, please say hello if you feel like it. Ruslan and, is it Rhina? Welcome. Rhodesy, you haven't missed anything. All right. We've got a cool stream today, so we're going to hear a little bit from Rhodesy to kick us off. And then if you read the description, Antonio had a question about a jazz pianist, and Nathaniel, who can't attend today live, had a question about some Czerny, so we're going to dive into that third. And then we'll go from there. And I think it shouldn't take too long to get through those initial questions, and then we can open it up to anything that you'd all like to talk about today. So, two things I wanted to mention before we jump into that. I guess maybe three. First piece of news, there's a new video coming out on the Pianist Academy channel here on Friday. I know it's been a bit since I released one, but I think you'll enjoy it. I'm continuing the series on what separates different levels of pianists. So Friday, there'll be a video that is what separates advanced students from intermediate ones. So I hope you'll check that out. Also, you saw, as if you were here for the little intro bit that played, if you're interested in any of my Christmas arrangements, I think I have 20 or 30 of them. Hey, Dith. They are all for sale because it's July, Christmas in July. I always do Christmas in July sales. So they're all 50% off on my store right now. Not on Music Notes, just on my store. So if you there's a link in the description for that. If you're interested in stuff like that, they range in difficulty from what you just heard is probably late intermediate to very advanced. And also, if you didn't get my email, if you're not on my email list, my Christmas course, that is 9 hours. You get 5 pieces of sheet music. It's for intermediate players. That is also on sale this month until the end of the month. So there's a link to that in the description as well. Okay, that's all the news for today. Calais, you say you're always at the beginner level and you haven't had lessons in 35 or more years. And you finished Moonlight Sonata when you were 14. Well, brilliant. Yeah, Calais, gosh, find a teacher, take lessons, or just enjoy playing. Just play a little bit again, right? Moonlight Sonata, by the way, I wouldn't say is a beginner level piece. So good for you for working on that and finishing that up. All right, let's jump in. So we're hearing Rhodesy do a little bit of playing. I'll have to preface this, Rhodesy. Rhodesy sent over 2 videos. One is a little intro to the piece that's not notated that he plays, and then I have to jump videos to another one to show the rest of the piece. But we're going to take a listen to that. This is called Album Leaf. And Rhodesy, can you share, while I get that queued up, can you share who you wrote this for? Album Leaf, they're usually dedicatory pieces for someone important. So if you're open to sharing that, please share that in the chat. And let's take a listen. So first to Rhodesy's intro, when we'll see him play, and then we're going to jump over to a notated for your girlfriend. Beautiful. Beautiful. Lovely. All right, let's take a listen, Rhodesy. All right. Nice work, Rhodesy. Let's give Rhodesy a round of applause, can we? Lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Rhodesy. Appreciate it. And thanks for sharing both parts. You mentioned in your email that the intro is improvised. I think you usually improvise it, and it would be a little difficult to notate everything that you played in those first couple seconds. Yeah. Great, Rhodesy. Let me start off by saying nice job establishing a theme. A nice job showing some variations on that theme in a handful of different ways. So you took us on a nice progression from just stating it more simply at the beginning and then expanding only a little bit and then expanding more and coming full circle and coming back to how you originally stated it as we approach the end. That's all nice stuff. I also appreciate, because we've talked about this before, I appreciate you sticking with a little bit of a narrower harmonic language. That's good stuff. I'm glad you're doing that exploring. I think two. Let's see, Rhodesy said you originally composed this at a public piano and it stayed in your head. Very cool. Very cool. I have two, maybe three topics to talk about. Rhodesy, sometime I would really love to see you play a whole piece and play, gosh, the last time I think we heard you play, maybe the only time we've heard you play a fully composed piece of music was Chopin's Prelude. I think it was the A major, I think. I would love to continue to hear you play and see you play, and I think everybody here would, so I'm just encouraging you to definitely show us more of that, for sure. Okay. First up, let's talk a little bit about the intro. Maybe this will allude to what we can talk about later. Alexis, I'm thinking of you again. I'm going to pull up Mendelssohn's Rondo Capriccioso because this is an interesting piece to talk about, a shade of a similar form as what you're writing, Rhodesy. And before I even show any sheet music, we're not really going to dive into this. Hopefully we have time later because Alexis, right, you had questions about the octaves, I think, right? But let's just talk about how Mendelssohn composes an introduction. And this is one example of many. Okay, we get a 4-bar intro, just 4 bars. It's actually 3.5. That is the introduction. That's it. All for the sake of setting up the melody that's coming here. Right? Okay, so first off, Rhodesy, I think the exploratory nature of the introduction, that's a great place to do some of that. But I think we can lend or add more gravity to the melodies that you write if the introduction is kept a little more simple and just a little more straightforward. So what Mendelssohn does is really, he just highlights a couple of the harmonies we're going to explore as we progress in the piece. It's just the 1 chord, an inversion, and then the 2 chord, an inversion, secondary dominant, back to 5, to the secondary dominant, to 5, or 1, 6, 4, 5, 7, 1. That's really not all that complicated. And if there's any kind of melody, it's buried, it's hidden in the middle of that texture. Now, when we jump forward, when Mendelssohn introduces a melody, it's also very simple, simply stated. That's the first statement. Yes. Rhodesy, you did try to show off some of the harmonies. You did. But even if you think about Chopin, and even if we think about the Polonaise Fantasy, or even if we think about the first ballade, the introductions are never too crazy, right? So we don't usually get a lot of flourishes. Those are reserved for later on, unless there's something that needs to really lead us to that opening bar of the theme, right? So that's what I want you to take away, Rhodesy, is that the introduction, I like that you did explore the same harmonies, right? Opus 44, I'd have to look that one up. I like that you did explore some of the harmonies. I think if we're going to write a really expansive and very exploratory and more technical introduction, I think we need to be really careful about how we structure that. Opus 44, that's the Polonaise. That's, is that that one? I think that's the one. Even there, yes, that's a bit showy for sure. But it's over very quick, and it sticks to one motif. Da 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 dum, that then gets expanded upon. So it's like a mini composition in itself. Right? Okay. Let's jump back to your piece, Rhodesy. I'm just pulling up your sheet music here. Okay, so I said 3 points. That was the first one. See if we can keep the introductions that you write. Yeah, so you said a little more simple introduction. Yeah, I would say so. And it doesn't need to greatly, like we don't need to melodically allude to where we're going. But don't kind of, I would shy away from taking our breath away and then not giving it back to us in the composition, really, in the body of it, right? Okay. Okay, next step. So, here's our sheet music. There's that mode mixture that you love doing, Rhodesy. And back. Okay. Interesting first opening statement. We have a waltz-like texture. That's great. Something that I'm noticing, this wasn't one of the points I planned on talking about, but let's talk about it. Your pedal marks that you've marked here are very different than the traditional marks that you'd find in a waltz tempo. They're kind of almost opposite in a sense, because in a waltz, we'd always want to be sustaining the first note, the bass note, right? And so, Rhodesy, did you pedal just, did you write the pedal marks so that you, for the sake of muse score, let's say, for the way it sounded, or do you intend them to actually be played like that? Because we're losing, if we follow that, we're losing the bass, right? So that's one thing. Waltzes, we always sustain from that first pitch and then through the bar. That also makes it very, very tricky to actually execute the harmony in those measures well. You've done a nice job of using a common tone of the F, which is also in that chord. But if we don't pedal for the D flat major chord, it sounds really blurry and kind of not so great between those, right? But if we do pedal for the D flat major chord, like you've marked, maybe a little bit to the right, but like you've marked, then we lose the bass. So those are things for you to continue to weigh as you either, if you wanted to revise this, or going forward when you write waltz-like figures, are you okay with the fact that we have to pedal and we lose the low note? That should be, I think, reserved for only a few occasions, because it's that low note in 3/4 time and waltz time that is the impetus that pushes us, it propels us through the bar. And if we lose that underpinning, it can be here again also. We have to pedal and we lose the bass. Or is there a way for you to rewrite that? Using both hands, maybe, where the right hand can share some of the harmony that's going on there. Where we still get the addition of some kind of bass. And then we have freed up the left hand to actually play that. Yeah. So, Rosie, is that all making sense? Okay. So I wasn't planning on talking about those pedals, but yeah. 6/8. Rosie, 6/8 is a very different time signature. Let's just talk about that quickly for the sake of everybody here. Somebody, can we chime in and say, what is the difference beyond simply 3/4 is 3 beats, quarter note is the beat, 6/8 is 6 beats, eighth note is the beat. What is the bigger difference between 3/4 and 6/8? Rhodesy, feel free to also chime in, but just to get everybody thinking. Dith. Bethany, perfect. Yes. Okay. Those are great. 6/8 is a compound meter. 3/4 is a simple meter. So in 3/4 we have 1 strong beat. In 6/8 we have 2 strong beats. Rhodesy, 6/8. Yes. 2 groups of 3/8 in the bar. That's correct. The only other way to rewrite 6/8 would be in triplets, in like something like 2/4. And Alexis, it would lose the waltz feel. It absolutely would. It absolutely would. So 6/8, you're right, Rosie, it does not work in 6/8. What is the difference between simple meter and compound meter? Again, I'll wait for you to answer that. Simple meter is 3/4 or 4/4 or 2/4. Compound meters are things like 6/8. What's the difference between those? This is great. I get to enjoy my coffee while you all think and type. Dith, we have a shoulder shrug. Rhodesy says compound equals a downbeat and an offbeat. Simple is just a downbeat. Those are nope. Alan says the accents. Alan, not quite. You're the closest so far. By the way, welcome, Alan. Any other guesses? Bethany, compound breaks the beat into 3 instead of 2. Perfect answer. Thanks, Bethany. Compound meters, all compound meters, the beat is subdivided. The main beats are subdivided into 3. All simple meters, the main beat is subdivided into 2. Yes. So Rhodesy, the simple fact that you wrote eighths later on here is definitely simple meter, simple 3/4 meter. Because otherwise those would all be duple feels when we're supposed to be counting in groups of 3. So it would be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You see how that instantly we lose the sense of the pulse for the notes that you wrote. It just doesn't work. Dith, you say rhythm and time signatures have never made sense. No, they'll come together for you, Dith. Yeah. Give it time. Give it time. I think it's ironic that for students of piano, I think I've seen the words compound meter introduced in method books when 6/8 is introduced, but the true underlying principle, I think, is almost always missing when the meter gets introduced. And I don't know why. I don't think it makes it simpler. I don't think it makes it easier to understand. Maybe if you're a really, really young student, maybe. But definitely for all of us here, I think it would be better if we just get the real, true definition. Compound meter always divides into 3. So compound meters are 6/8, 9/8, 12/8, 3/8. 3/8 is one strong beat. That's it, 1 beat per bar. Okay, I hope that all makes sense. Diff, I hope that makes a little more sense for you. And Bethany, you said, yeah, even Bethany, we've all heard Bethany play and write. Even Bethany had to look it up. Bethany, I hope you don't feel like I'm picking on you there. I'm not. Okay, Rotzi, let's jump back in. I have a question for you, Rotzi. We're in the key of B flat. I'll put the music back up for everybody. We're in the key of B flat. What is tonic and what is dominant? Rotzi, while you think about that, I'm going to answer Dith's question. What leads someone to pick 3/8 instead of 3/4? Exactly what we just talked about, Dith. 3/8 would be felt as 1, 1, 1. And it's usually very fast. Very fast. And the 2 micro beats, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You'll usually get a tempo like that. That is far faster than a waltz tempo. 3/4, in 3/4, the second and third beat are not quite as minimized as the subdivisions of the one large beat in 3/8. So a waltz is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There's still a bounce on 2 and 3. It's just small. In 3/8, there's no bounce on 2 and 3. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's very accented, but in a triplet feel. Does that make sense? Help answer that question. Rotzi says tonic is B flat, dominant is suspended chord. No. Rotzi, dominant is always, there's always only one definition of dominant. It's the 5 chord. The letter that corresponds to it, the root of the 5 chord, changes key to key. So what is the 5 chord in B flat? And you also said, Dith says B flat and F. B flat is the tonic. F major would be the 5 chord. Rutzi, you said this piece uses plagal cadences, not normal cadences. I'm scanning. That's why I'm pausing. Well, I see E flat. So yes, Rotzi, what makes a plagal cadence, Rotzi? What 2 chords, Roman numerals, what 2 chords make a plagal cadence? And also, why did you choose plagal cadences? Because that's an interesting choice, especially to make before we if you made it before you start composing, that's an interesting choice. I'll play while Rotzi answers that. Here's B flat for everybody, just a B flat harmony. A plagal cadence would be going from this chord back to B flat. And Rotzi's going to tell us what the Roman numeral of that is. I do love a good plagal cadence. And Bethany said the Amen chord. It is generally referred to as that because plagal cadences are used so often in hymns. Yeah, Dith. Yes, Dith, that's a great point. Dith, you say you found it helpful to think of the key signatures when trying to memorize what the dominants were for which keys, because there's always one additional sharp or one fewer flat. And that is because, Dith, to take us one step back from what you just said, that's because you're actually continuing around the circle of fifths. So if you go 1 from C, and you go up a sharp, and you say, well, the key with 1 sharp is G, G is the 5 chord. That's perfect. And we're going to the right on the circle of fifths. We go to the right on the circle of fifths again, we get D. That's important. That works going around the circle of fifths because the dominant is the 5 chord. So it's the 5th scale degree. So they correspond perfectly. Yeah, Bethany says, never thought of that. That's a really great tool that you've got there, Dith, to help remember those. Okay, Rhodesy says, I didn't quite learn cadences properly until after this piece. Okay, Rhodesy, I'll tell you. The plagal cadences are made from the 1 chord, B flat, it's a B flat chord, and the 4 chord, which in B flat is E flat major. So it'd be 1 and 4 and 1. Showing everybody 1, E flat is 4, here's root position, back to 1. Let's transpose that just for a second for everybody's sake to C, just to make sure that we all understand a plagal cadence. In C, C is the 1 chord, F is the 4 chord, so the cadence would be from F to C. Yes, Rotzi says, oh, it just goes up by a scale degree to E flat. Yeah, kind of. If we think about scale degrees in B flat is 1, C is 2, D is 3, E flat's 4, F is 5, G is 6, A is 7. We get back to B flat. Each of those chords, each of those scale degrees has a chord, a diatonic chord we can build on it. The most important ones to always know are the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. So in B flat, 1 is B flat, 4, the chord that's built on the 4th scale degree, F. Sorry, that's the 5 chord. The 4 chord is E flat because we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is E flat, 5 is F. That's how we build those chords. There are also 7 though. There's 1 using diatonic notes only. The 2 chord, minor. The 3 chord is minor. The 4 chord is major. 5 chord is major. 6 is minor. 7 is diminished. And back to 1. So Rotzi, I'm bringing this up, the idea of cadences and the type of cadence you use and knowing the chords that align with that, because I would love to see this piece have more ends of thoughts. And we create ends of thought in composition with cadences. Right? There's a little more to it than that, but let's start with that. So if we're starting in 1, here's the 5 chord in inversion. Put the music up. So back to bar 1. The 1 chord, 5 chord in inversion. Now you go back to 1 and 1, 6, 4 with some interesting, it's not quite a modulation, but maybe common tone mode mixture. So, because D flat major is not a diatonic chord in B flat. Truly, let's see, how can we define what D flat is? Flat major 3. So flat major 3. It's not, for those that know a little bit more theory, it's not a secondary dominant because a secondary dominant would have to resolve to down by a 5th. It would have to resolve to G flat, and we're definitely not going to G flat. Okay, so. So really, I feel like, Rhodesy, even though your slurs are a little different, it sounds and feels like your phrase goes till about here or so, and then the F in the right hand is a pickup or leading into the melody as it's restated. And through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish measures, we don't truly have an ending. That all ends up continuing to be kind of what we would call tonic prolongation. Tonic prolongation is the foundation for a lot of composition because we have to postpone our arrivals and returns home in order to make music really meaningful. And the better a composer is at doing that, prolonging tonic, so that the moments where we go to dominant or that we have that cadence, they're really impactful, right? But here, we're going to go back to that third bar in a second, Rosie. I think there are two opportunities here that we could explore more to create maybe an even more meaningful first phrase that you can then continue to develop. Because we've already, after 4 bars or so, ended the first phrase, the first motif, the theme, right? So can we find a way? Again, we'll come back there in a second. The very classical way to approach the end of the phrase would be something like that, where we really show movement to the 5 chord, the dominant, in this case that would be F7. We get the tiniest little glimpse of F for that little brief moment. But that tiny little brief moment doesn't really help us to feel like we have experienced the theme, finished the theme, had a breath, let our mind register, this is what the theme is, and then start to repeat it again with variation. Right? I'm not going to go past 9 yet, because then we start our variation. If you wanted to use, for example, you said plagal cadences, Rosie. How would we structure that? From D flat. I mean, that kind of works. That's using flat 2. Sorry. Yeah, flat 3 and 4 together to bring us back home. That doesn't really sound classical. It sounds much more modern. Right? But it's another way. You said you consider bar 10 as the start of the second phrase or theme. Rosie, let's talk about that. So Rosie, there are 2 ways that we could show a little bit more closure to the theme. Measure 10, form-wise, cannot work as, well, I suppose it can work as a second theme. The trouble is, Rosie, you gave us dum, bum, ba-dum, again, here, bum, bum, ba-dum. It's a literal repeat. And only the pickup note is slightly different, but it still moves in the same direction. So the ear instinctively says, this is one idea. This is another related idea. Right? Or it says, if we don't end in 9, where we go in measure 10 is not the beginning of a new phrase, because, well, first off, you've slurred it for us, which means connect. Okay? So by both the notation and by the way you've structured the first 9 bars, bar 10 doesn't stand alone as a whole new idea. It sounds like it is an expansion of the first phrase. And then we don't come back until 22. Now we have a variation on the main theme again. Okay, so Rotzi, it's all about how that was set up. That means that measure 10, it's not really a second theme and it's not a second phrase. It's just the development of your first phrase, more so. I wanted to go back to bar 3 because the movement from bar 2 to bar 3 and then into 4, we have an opportunity that you didn't explore for further tonic prolongation before we turn around and before we kind of start things over again. Rotzi, what did you begin to establish if we look at the bass and we skip 3 and then look at measure 4? That's all stepwise. It could be stepwise instead of a big leap of a 7th. So if we think about the bass line that you're building as a voice, that can lead us to play at least a D, if that would be the simplest solution, because now we have stepwise voice leading. And maybe we'd go up the 7th leading into measure 9. But once we play D here, all of a sudden we have, I think you can just hear instantly, there are so many new places we could go, and not just to what you've written. But, for example, just to incorporate the D flat chord back in. So we can write many, many more measures of our opening theme. Or we could even play for plagal cadence. If we, so Rotzi said you tried D, but it sounded, what did you say, wrong? I think, wrong. Think about common tones and all the different places that D can lead. So it's part of the B major chord. So it could be B flat in first inversion. It could be G, which is another diatonic chord, G minor, which you use later. Right? It could be G minor. It could be C minor, which is the minor 2 chord. It could also be many other things if we start exploring non-diatonic harmony as well. But even just sticking with those few options, that is just using B flat in first inversion. B flat in root position, F second inversion. What if we then changed it to be, well, I think I said C. Definitely not C. I don't know what I was thinking about that. So G, B flat, and D minor. Okay. Could we play D? Yes. So there are a lot of places that we could continue to go with that. Before we circle back around, Rotzi, before you throw in your color chord of D flat, which is far removed from diatonic harmony, great, keep it. But before we get there and before we turn around and start the theme over again, can we go further? And then when we've explored maybe 8 bars or 12 bars or 16 bars of a theme, Can we bring it to a close with a good cadence? Somehow. Plagal cadence if you'd like to, E flat to B flat, or your traditional authentic cadence of F in this case, F7 to back to 1, B flat. That would be great. That would all be great. Yeah. Rhodesy, let me leave you with this. Study up on different types of cadences. Specifically, authentic cadences. There's perfect authentic and imperfect authentic. Know what those two are and how to build them in the key we're working in. Know how to build a good plagal cadence. Know how to do it with good voice leading. Yes? And learn half cadence. That's one that we didn't talk about today. What is a half cadence? Anybody can answer that. Yes, Rhodesy, I'll take a look at your ending. And the ending melody. Yeah. Okay. Half cadence. Anybody? Rhodesy too? Alexis, the question was simply, what is a half cadence? How do we build? How do we make a half cadence? What chord is it comprised of? John, welcome, John, by the way. John says a 7 to a 1. No, not a 7 to a 1. Steven says a half cadence, a cadence that doesn't give 100%. Yeah, it doesn't bring us home. It doesn't bring us home is tonic, right? It doesn't bring us home. It leaves us hanging. It asks a question. Half cadence, Alexis, is not. No, it's not interrupted. But that's a great idea because of the word half. One more guess. Bethany. Wonderful. After you said you didn't know, a half cadence ends with the dominant chord. By ending on the 5 chord, we create question musically, which then allows us to create resolution in the next phrase. It's a great tool. The classical composers, gosh, Mozart especially, half cadences, they're all over the place. So in B flat, let's see. That would be something like this. I'm just going to improvise something. Oh, that was the 1 chord. So if I do some of that again. And then if it stays on the 5 chord, we never got a cadence back to 1. We never went home. We went away. 1, 1, 3, 2, and then still 2, 7. Suspension. And I went to a 1, 6, 4, down to 5. That's good. You could say that. So we end with the 5 chord. Because of that lack of resolution, we feel it wanting to resolve, but it never does. And then it goes on. And it allows us an opportunity to bring it home, bring it back to tonic with extra emphasis. Yes, exactly, Rhodesy. Okay, that goes back to that term we said, tonic prolongation. Giving us a half cadence, we don't actually feel that dominant movement of 5 to 1. 5 to 1 is what really creates that point of ending and that point of resolution. Because we don't have that, truly, the 5 chord, the dominant, serves as a way to continue to prolong before we get a very firm, great, easy to feel resolution. And usually, like I said before, that is described as a phrase that sounds like it asks a question. And then, of course, like Rhodesy just said, your ears long for B flat. That's right. And then we have an opportunity to answer the question we just wrote by writing another good phrase that ends with some kind of authentic cadence or plagal cadence. Okay, Rhodesy, just quickly, you asked me to look at your last little bit of melody, you said, in the triplets. In general, Rhodesy, I'd say that it's too exploratory without enough of a purpose or one high point of the phrase. And it's also not quite fast enough to be some kind of cadential figure or a flourish. Polyrhythm, the polyrhythm you wrote, 3 against 2, should be, once you learn it, that should be relatively easy to play. 3 against 2 is one of the first polyrhythms that we'll learn. Once that's comfortable, that won't be a problem. It's not like a 7 against 3 or 9 against 5 or something like that. Those would be much more challenging. But I would say that we either need to speed the right hand much more than triplets, at least in places, if you want to show extra movement that leads us to the end of the third statement, and that provides that extra forward direction and extra forward push, or if we want to truly keep it triplets and 3 against 2, we need to vary the rhythm somehow and break it up with some pauses and some breath so that it sounds a little more human. Yeah. In 16th notes, Rhodesy, that wouldn't be the next best direction to go, not without other variation, because only speeding up to 16ths would still lead us to feel, this is going to sound a little aggressive, but suffocated musically, right? It leads us to feel like we're just holding our breath and we're not getting a resolution, and we're not that point where we can have that moment where we can breathe again and kind of sigh and relax. It doesn't come. And it's still, even when we get there, it doesn't feel like we were led there. It feels like we just we hit a brick wall, and then we're holding our breath, and then we go like, bam! And then we get to that point and we say, I think I can relax here and I can breathe. But that isn't the kind of, that's not the kind of gesture that we want to give a listener because that feels uncomfortable. So by altering the rhythm, some faster, some slower, and showing a point of breath, we can still, if your purpose was to show more drama and more excitement by doing this speeding and showing the polyrhythm, we can do that, and we can do it more effectively if we have some little places that we can take a little bit of break, or some little places that just change things up a little bit, so that it's not just a constant stream of triplets. Yes. Okay, Rhodesy, that's going to wrap it up for this. We talked about a whole lot of stuff. I'm glad you sent this in. I hope that everybody here that was watching learned something. Hopefully about theory or about cadences or about, I don't know. Gosh, there was so much stuff. And even though this was all about composition for Rhodesy, we can use everything that we just talked about when we analyze a piece of music that we're playing. If we can understand a few of those things, a few of those bits and pieces, like where's a an authentic cadence? Where's a half cadence? Why does the composition sound like this? What tool was used? And then when we know that tool is used, we can, as the performer, we can kind of exploit that. We can say, well, if the purpose is this is a half cadence, and the purpose is to ask a question, I want to make sure that I really ask the question with my interpretation, and that I don't just go blazing through a half cadence. Because, right, that won't sound as good. John, yes, we will definitely get to your question, John, about carbon actions. I would love to talk about those. Rhodesy, out of 10? Let's see. I'm going to do a rating, Rhodesy, for you compared to other things that I've heard from you, so that it truly is relative to your progression. And I would give this let's say an 8.5 out of 10, which I think is pretty darn good. Because you really have, I can see that you've explored things that we have talked about in the past. And we just need to keep doing that, right? So 8.5. So still room to grow, but very good. Yes? We didn't give Rhodesy a second round of applause, so let's drop some applause in the chat for Rhodesy. It's always difficult to share. We all know it's difficult to share our own playing, but it's also very difficult to share music that we write ourselves. Yes. I always have a lot of respect. I teach a lot of composition, and I have a lot of respect for all of my composition students because they all, and you are included in this, Rhodes, you all take the constructive criticism very well. And that's very hard to do. That's hard to put yourself aside when it's your own personal creation. So I appreciate that. Okay. Yes, John, I'm going to come back to your question. Antonio had sent in a question about a jazz pianist. Antonio, this is going to be a fairly quick. You asked for my opinion on Italian jazz pianist Rossano Sportiello. Antonio, if you're here, could you drop that name in the chat? It'll make it a little easier for me to keep talking. First off, I love finding other people, and Antonio, thanks for introducing me to him, and thanks for when you drop it in the chat. There we go. Go look him up. Everybody that's here, definitely go look up Rossano. Really fine jazz pianist. He has a ton of stuff on YouTube. Yes, Antonio. To give my quick opinion about his playing, I had a chance, Antonio, to listen to, maybe 20 minutes of him playing a little solo and with some other people. Antonio, you'd be best probably to answer Rhodesy's question because I don't have the greatest pool of listening information to give about this particular person. But, Bethany, this goes back to what we talked about last time. Bethany, I think if you want to find a new jazz pianist to listen to, and he's got so many videos out. I mean, it's over 100 live streams he's done, and they're all numbered, and they all have some kind of theme. You could probably find any standard that you'd want to listen to, maybe more than once, but you could find it on his channel. And I think he's a fine pianist, and I say that with fine being a very good word, not okay, but very good. Yeah. I can't speak to a ton, Antonio, but I liked his chord voicings. I liked the way he structured phrase. I liked the way he worked with the other performers that were on the streams that I listened to. I took a quick listen to one of his live albums on Spotify. I only listened to a minute or two, and I was a little struck by, it seemed like he was rushing a touch. But it was live. It could be he was very excited. It could be that he was purposely pushing it forward on purpose. I don't have enough background on him to really make a great supposition about his intention. Just that it felt like it wasn't in the pocket a couple times. But other than that, gosh, it was very lovely music to listen to. Kale, I will come back to your question. Yes, I will. So, Antonio, I know I don't know how deep you want it to go with with that conversation, but as always, I appreciate you informing me about other pianists that are out there. I love hearing about them and listening to their music, and that we can all share that together, and people can go and listen to someone else that's spent a lifetime training and performing and working at and honing their craft and is quite good at it. And someone that doesn't have the same name recognition as, some of the other names that were listed: Art Tatum, Jelly Roll, Fats Waller, Bill Evans, etc. You say sometimes his technical mastery takes over pure expression. Yeah, I could see that. I can see that. Brad Meldau, love his music, Bethany. So Antonio, I hope that is a comprehensive enough talk for your question. I realize we didn't spend a ton of time on it, but I can't share any of his music here on the stream for us to chat about. But I can just recommend that everybody go and take a listen to Rossano. You know what? Because Nathaniel had the third question that he emailed me ahead of time about, because he is not here for the live, let me actually answer a few of the other questions that have come in, so I don't keep you all waiting for that, knowing that I probably have a good 15 to 20 minutes to talk about Czerny coming up, specifically for Nathaniel, but we can all learn from that. So let me go back to John. John, all of your questions that you've dropped in, let me catch up on those. And then I will answer Kale's question about switching from classical to kind of chord work and playing accompaniment for church. Yeah, let's talk about those two. So, okay, here we go. John, you say you're taking online piano technician courses. You've gone down rabbit holes comparing different manufacturers. How much of a difference is there between the Millennium 3 action in the Kawais and the Weckel-Nickel Gross WNG actions in Mason and Hamlin's? And do I see Yamaha moving to carbon fiber actions in the future? And on the piano shopping side, you're conflicted between Yamaha and Kawai. You like the action of the GL10. The GL10 is a Kawai model, right? But I think you mean that you like that the Yamaha is brighter? And Kale says you like Yamaha but want to buy a Yamaha one day. Yeah. Okay, so going back to, the first question was about a comparison in synthetic action parts, especially between the Kawai Millennium 3 and Weckel-Nickel Gross. I believe that my piano is 1 year prior to when the current version of the Millennium 3 action came out from Kawai. It feels a little bit better than this does, and probably this year I will be replacing all the rest of the action on this piano with Weckel-Nickel Gross parts. Right now, all I have are the shanks, hammer shanks and flanges that are carbon fiber from WNG. I'm planning on doing the rest of the action, doing a rebuild on that. That will answer right there part of your question. I love, out of all of the actions, out of all of the manufacturers, I love WNG Action the most because it is extremely faithful to what I put into the instrument. And so for a decade, I had daily access to a Mason & Hamlin Double B with all carbon fiber action. I loved that piano. I hope one day to get an instrument like that in here. My dream piano is a Mason & Hamlin, probably Double C, if I could get one. That would be phenomenal. That's a 9'4". Rhodesy, I'm not a piano technician, but I've talked to so many, I feel like I can speak to these points. So the Millennium Action from Kawai, especially my generation, this is a 1999 instrument. It has I believe it's the heaviest whippings ever made for piano. And yes, John, yes, I am. Thanks for seeing that. The whippings in this they're so heavy, and what that corresponds to in feel is very sluggish to respond. Even more so, I usually also think of New York Steinways as being very sluggish to respond, unless they've been treated by kind of a magician piano tech. Not Hamburg's, but just the New York ones. And I don't love that. I love actions that are super responsive and that really give me, I know exactly what I'm going to get out of the piano before I play, because the action is so precise and it's so responsive. And that's what I love about WNG actions. That's why I love about Mason & Hamlin. One of the things I love about Mason & Hamlin pianos, and why I'll be rebuilding this instrument with a WNG action. The Millennium 3 parts are a little bit more refined, and they're a little bit lighter. I haven't had any issues. John, I don't know if you're looking at a used instrument, a pre-owned one or a new one, but I have not had any issues with the components in this piano are more like plastic than carbon. And it's 25 years old, and I have not had an issue with them breaking down or wearing in a strange way. That has never been an issue. It's just the fact that I don't like how long the whip-in takes to return to position. So I think I said this, that they were the heaviest whip-ins ever made, pretty sure. WNGs are about half the weight. I think the last time I talked to them, there's something like 16 grams per key, I think, in that range. The lighter all of the action components are, the lighter they are, the less mass you're having to push toward the string, and the less mass gravity needs to pull back, which means everything just gets faster and faster and more precise and more responsive. So I love that. Now, that's my personal opinion. There are a lot of people that love a very slow Steinway action. Or a lot of concert artists that love a very slow Steinway action because it's very forgiving. So if you play something and you execute it minutely off, it's not going to sound off. And if there was an article I was reading just this past week, actually, or maybe it was a video I saw. I cannot remember the creator or the author. I almost felt like it was slightly insulting. These are not my words, but the author said that playing a Steinway is like having training wheels on a bike because it's just so easy to play really well. Whereas, take the training wheels off and you are given a super precise action, well, it's not going to cover up all of those tiny little imperfections in your technique and in your playing. So that is both why I love WNG action, because it's so precise, and also why people dislike it, because it's so precise and it's not as forgiving. So you really, if you can try one out, that would be absolutely the best thing, because it's going to feel, you're familiar with Yamaha, so you're familiar with how fast Yamaha actions are. They're usually known as being the fastest traditional wood actions on the planet. and the WNGs are far faster. They feel just like lightning at your fingertips. Some people love it, some people don't. So I would really go play one. Yeah. Yes. So let me see. Between the two brands, and John, this depends on the style you play, but between the two brands, Kawai and Yamaha, I would usually lean toward a Kawai because I like the warmth of the tone more so than I like Yamaha. Yamaha can have a warmer tone, especially with some of their new instruments. It can, especially in the S line of pianos. They can be much warmer than the X or the C line. So if you compare, for example, an S6 and a C6 by Yamaha, same size instrument, but how they've done the aging process with wood really does change the tonal product that the piano gives you. And I'd say the S, it doesn't sound like a Kawai, but it's much more in line with the warmth of a Kawai from Yamaha's S series than the C series. Because I play so much classical music, and even my own composition, my own arranging leans toward that style, I prefer that more warmer tone. I don't think it's better or worse. I think it's another personal preference. Both Kawai and Yamaha have a fantastic reputation, and I don't think you're going to go wrong by purchasing either one. Johan says, interesting to see how many pianists prefer Yamaha in the Chopin competition. The CFX is kind of a piano in a league of its own from Yamaha, I think. And it's very beautiful to play. And at least from the other pianos by Yamaha that I've experienced, all of the CFX concert grands from Yamaha are so beautiful, gorgeous. They feel wonderful. They feel really good. Every time I've had a choice between a Yamaha CFX and a Steinway, I've always picked the CFX without fail every time I've been given a choice. And not because of a name, but just purely if I was blindfolded, the Yamaha felt so much easier to control. I liked the tone much, much more. So I have not been in a hall yet where I have flipped that, where if a hall has both instruments to choose from. Now, that said, the CFX, I said, is kind of in its own league. I haven't yet played another piano, a smaller instrument from Yamaha that does that same magic that the CFX does. Maybe someday. Granted, I have not played an S series from Yamaha. I've only played the C series of pianos. John, so you said thanks, but does that help? Does that help narrow it down? Even if I were to give you one final thing, even if I were to purchase, this won't happen. This won't happen. But even if I were to purchase a Steinway, I would outfit it with WNG action. Because I just love it so much. So, anyway. And Rhodesy says, all these cost as much as a car and weigh as much. They cost more than most cars, Rhodesy. Yeah, a Steinway D and a Yamaha CFX. Discount, not talking about Fazioli yet, but those two are well over $200,000 US MSRP. So, extremely expensive. That's also why I don't have a Mason & Hamlin double C. I'm a working musician. Okay, great, John. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, good. You could find a beautiful instrument for $25, absolutely. And yeah, Faziolis are even more expensive. I've heard they are in excess of $300,000 for their largest ones. At least in the United States, they are. Maybe part of that is the import tax. Okay. So I see Alexis, you have a question. Ruslan has a question. I wanted to go back and talk about Kale's question. Oh, and John, you had asked about Yamaha moving to carbon fiber. I don't think that's going to happen. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Every little bit helps. And yeah, Kale says, yeah, yeah, things have to be in order for all of us. Yeah, having a place to live is more important than having a nice grand piano, for sure, for sure. So no, John, I don't see Yamaha going to carbon fiber because of, especially because of their association with Bösendorfer and Bösendorfer's association with Renner, and Renner being among the finest wooden action parts you can buy. Unless Renner would make a big push toward changing their direction in the future, I don't think Yamaha is going to. Okay. Kale's question about switching from playing classical to playing accompaniment and chord work. So, Kale, do you have, when you do play at church or when you're being asked to play, what kind of music do you get? Is it just like a vocal line? Is it one line of music? Or are you playing off a chord sheet where you have the chord changes? Or are you playing out of like a hymnal that's written in 4 parts? What kind of stuff, what does it look like? And what are you presented with? You said yes, but hopefully you're writing something else. Okay, you've seen chord sheets. Worship team tells me a little bit. It would be like more contemporary stuff, not traditional hymns. Okay. First thing, Kale, take a couple of some of your simpler classical pieces that you know. Yeah, you don't need to go back. I wouldn't say that. Zen of Zen, yes. So Kale, you don't need to go back and take lessons. I would go back to some of your simpler classical music and write in chord changes for it. Gosh, let's pick something. Kale, what's a piece that do you have a couple pieces that you play regularly, like daily, or there are a couple things that have been in your fingers for a long time, or that would be easy to get back? Hopefully I might have some of them on my iPad that we could share and chat about. John, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, John. Kale says, like Clementi sonatinas. Wonderful. Let's just take the first one. Okay. Not everybody's favorite, but everybody knows. Okay. It's definitely written in multiple voices. Can we recompose it for chords and melody? So, Kale, do something like this. What chord do we have in bar 1? C major. Give yourself a chord name. C major, C major. That's still C major. Now we have G. Back to C. That's still C. Now, that is truly actually D major. It's D major 9, but let's just write D for now. G, A minor, G in inversion, D to G, Ho ho, it's a half cadence. Just like we talked about before. Let's just take that much. Now, can we extract the melody? Don't play it in a Clementi style. We're just going to use the melody to help keep time with ourselves. So just let's put the pedal down and pretend we're playing this like a pop song, okay? We're going to start by playing root position chords. So get to know your root position chords to start with. C major, G major, C major. Yes. What are the other ones we have? D, G, A minor. Those are all of them. So we're in the key of C. That will be one that your worship team uses for sure. Get to know these main chords that are used, and Clementi gives them to you. Get to know root position so that we can read truly just what I've put in red on the page, and we know the chord shape. So I realize this is not what Clementi should sound like if you're studying it, but just used in a different way. Play one chord for every measure where the chords change. And slow down that measure if you need to. Okay? Now next, after you have played, this is a great example. This is bar 7 here. Bar 7, once you have played these in root position, now starting with the first one, which in this case was D, find the closest inversion to play through this chord progression. In that case, this would be D, G, A, G, D, G. If we add the right hand, there it is. Now you can continue on with that. What if we play D, not in root position? What if we play D in first inversion? We're going to get all different chords subsequent in our phrase, all different chord voicings. D, G, A, G, D, G. And if we put D in second inversion, we'll drop for that. We're once again going to get new chord voicings. You could walk the bass line up. That would be interesting, or okay. So I realized I didn't have the sheet music up for all of that bit because I wanted you to see the changes in chord shape. But this is taking something, music you're used to looking at, writing in simple chord changes. And Clementi is great because the harmony isn't going to be too complex. He's going to use mostly diatonic harmony with a few secondary dominants, which is a lot like how pop music and contemporary worship music is built. So here's another thing you can do. Once you have played, let's see, some of this in C major, can you transpose it to another key? So, for example, a common key that you might find in worship music will be G major. This is going to be hard to do on the spot, but here we go. So G, I'm also transposing the melody. Let's see. Oh, what is it? That's right. D. Okay. That's really hard to do on the spot. But even better, can you just rewrite the chord changes in another key like G? So using the distance that you're traveling from root to root, when C moves to G, you're going up by fifth. So if we're in the key of G, G is going to move to D. Okay? So we can take this same piece, just work on the chord changes first, and now we're getting to practice those same fundamental chord changes. Callie, I appreciate your comment. Could have been better. But you get to practice those same chord progressions that, again, use the primary chords in any key, and we get to work on them in a new key. We did them in C, we can do them in G, we could do them in D, and an F, and an A, and an E. That would be a good list of common keys for worship music. Let me go through this again. C, D, E, F, maybe. If you've got brass players or like a saxophone player, F for sure. If you don't, F might be avoided. G and A. Why that list? Because those keys generally work well for guitarists and bass players. So if your worship team is like drums, bass, guitar, piano, voice, it's going to probably be in those keys, one of those. And it'll be rare that it won't be, unless the worship team is like really, if they're really good, you might get some other keys. Yes, Sonatina 2 is in G, that's right. Yes, Bethany, yeah, that's a great comment, Bethany. So Calais, that's what I would do first. Take some of that classical rep, put it in chords, because you know how it's supposed to sound. And then secondarily, we still want to do some of this chord practice also with the right hand. So you can go back to Clementi and, can you play an octave and then play chords in the right hand? And all it has to be to start with is just, we might call it chunking chords, like one every quarter note. It's going to get you very, very far. Okay? So if you stick with root position, I'll sing the melody of this sonatina so we can keep track of where we are. You could do that. Or don't play octaves in the left if that's too much jumping around. Just play one note and a chord in the right hand. Yeah, absolutely, Calais. I hope that's helpful. I hope that starts your journey into this kind of stuff because, oh, great, Calais. You say the Nashville number system. Nashville numbers are very similar to Roman numerals, and that things are called the 1 chord and the 4 chord and the 5 chord. Except instead of writing Roman numerals down, you just write the number 1, 4, 5. They mean the same thing, though. In C major, the 1 is C, the 4 is F, the 5 is G. Why use Nashville numbers? Because then if you know your keys and you know your primary chords, you can transpose it to any key with the same sheet. So if you've got 1, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 you could play that in, technically, you could play it in any key that you know those chords in. So then you only have to have one chord sheet, and it's got all of that. And then, depending on who the singer is and what key they need it in, you can, on the fly, just play the chords in a different key. The good news is that most of the time playing that style of worship piano, you don't have to worry about playing a melody. You don't have to worry about reading too much intricate stuff. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Okay, let me jump back. Okay. I think the next question was from, we've got Alexis and Ruslan. Alexis, I'm going to answer your question first, and then we'll go to Ruslan's. Is it Ruslan or Ruslan? Calais, I do have a PayPal. I don't have it linked on this video, but gosh, if you go to my other channel where I put all my performances out, I have a PayPal tip jar, I call it. I can't link that very easily while I'm on the stream, but I do have one if you check out some of my other work on my other channel. There's usually a link to that channel in the description for everything here. Okay, Alexis, your question was, And I would love, gosh, I would love to get to Mendelssohn. I still have to answer Nathaniel's question about Czerny. Alexis, you say, what do you do when you have to compose something but you have no ideas on how to start? And if you have an idea, you don't know where to go. I have two, let me give you two answers for that. The second part of that is easier to answer first. If I have an idea and I can't figure out where to go from there, I usually start exploring compositional tools. So I will explore things like inversion and retrograde, playing it backwards. Let's do a little bit of that together. Let's say we're in D major. I've been writing a lot of stuff for some reason in D major lately. And let's write a quick theme. Let's say I'm stuck there. So what did I play? Something like that. I'll go back and I'll analyze. Dith, I appreciate that. I'll go back and I'll analyze what I did. Okay, my theme starts with a leap up a sixth. And now I'm using some mode mixture to the minor 4. Back to 1. And just some stepwise movement. Okay, so two big components that I'm realizing about what I improved was that I didn't know when I just played it that I was playing up a sixth and then using minor 4. I was improving based on just what it felt like. I wasn't thinking about theory. Now I'm adding the theory to it. So skip of a sixth using minor 4 with stepwise movement. Second part of the theme leaped by an octave and I'm playing on the minor 6 chord and then more step motion with the descending bass line. Okay, if I want to take those leaps and then I want to reverse them because I don't know where to go, let's see what would happen if I leave where I am. I'm on a B. Now I want to leap down a sixth instead of up a sixth like we started. So I'm using the same motif, if you will, or there's just that little component of it in a totally different place, starting on a G, on a B up high. Now the leap is going to be ba-dum. Okay, what chords can go with that? I like E minor. That sounds nice. I would also have the choice of just keeping it simple, G and or C9, A, what is that? 11. What else? Well, I don't want to play D again because maybe I could. No, that sounds funky. So I was here. I really like going to E minor. So, followed by stepwise movement. Back to our minor 4 that I introduced at the beginning. Okay. Oh, yeah. How does that? You're all talking about Star Wars. Yeah. I hope I don't get copyright infringement for that. That's a beautiful piece. So Alexis, to sum that up, when I've got something that I've already written and it's just one phrase, I look for all of the little component parts that built that. And I mean, I'll write them down. I'll identify as many as I can. Even just skips, one interval skip in a melody that sets something apart. Things like I said, stepwise motion, when a melody is stepwise versus leaping. Specific chords that were used, color chords, and or how did they relate from where I started. So we were playing from the 1 chord to the minor 4 chord. What if we were playing, if we wanted to incorporate that in this other part of the piece where we said we stopped, and I wanted to play down, incorporate the leap in the opposite direction, and the harmony ascending by fourth, just the way I did in the first 2 harmonic changes, and going to a minor chord, a fourth higher. We're in G in the left hand, so that would be playing C minor. That takes us down a very different road. And the beautiful thing about using just 1 or 2 of those tools is that they can cue your inspiration to get started all over again. So just hearing something like that movement, all of a sudden my ear has so many new ideas for where I want to take the composition that it would have never had I not done that little analysis and then put a couple things together and say, here we go, let's try these out, following the same formula that made the first phrase so wonderful. That I've done that for sure in pieces I've written. And on the flip side, you said the other part of your question was if you just don't know what to write to even get started, you want to write something and you don't know where to go. I do 2 things. 1, I listen. I just fill my ears with great music. I listen to something, and maybe I'll try to pick a style that I want to write in and listen to music in that style. So if I want to write something romantic, leaning classical, but somewhat film-inspired, or somewhat sounds like cinematic music that leans classical, I'll listen to John Williams, and I'll also listen to Tchaikovsky, or something like that. Or maybe a little Rachmaninoff. And then start to just get those, the common harmonies that they use and the way they navigate and the way they write melodies, get those in my ear, not to copy anything, but just to have a foundation to build off of, to build something new off of. If I wanted it to be something totally different, I'd explore different music. Yeah, Rhodesy, I wish I could improv in a Lisztian style. My mind does not go fast enough to play all of the runs and octaves and everything else that I'd want. Yeah. Okay. That was a great question, Alexis. I hope that was helpful for you. Let me go back to Ruslan's question. Okay. You say you have a problem where you can't control your sound well enough and you randomly accent notes in a large phrase. There are exercises to develop good sound control. Do you have an example of a piece you're working on where that is happening for you? Go ahead and yeah, Alexis, my pleasure. Ruslan, if you've got one, go ahead and leave that. I'm going to start by talking about one of my own arrangements. Oh, Heroic Polonaise. Oh man, I don't have that. I might have it close. Second to the last part. Remind me, that's Opus 53, right? Oh, I have never played this one. AKA the slow part. We're talking about... So in there... Yeah, I know, Rhodesy. If there's something you could count on, if it was a popular piece, I probably didn't want to learn it when I was in school because I wanted to learn the unpopular stuff. Actually, there was some more thought than that underneath. Truly, it was that I didn't want to present, in competitions, I didn't want to present the same piece that everybody else was playing, or that like 50% of the competitors were playing. If they were playing Chopin, half the people would offer the same piece of music. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to play something different. Okay. She's 16th notes in the right hand. So, measures, let's see, Ruslan measures 129 and beyond. Whoop. Is that the part we're talking about? And if you've got a measure number, can you tell me? Right about there. Okay. Okay, Ruslan, first thing, I would practice the entire phrase detached first. Under tempo. Detached and forte. Okay. And then, is it B flat? Yes, it is. Okay. Start there. Start to build your tempo up and still don't force the detached playing to continue, but let it, as your tempo increases, let it gradually work its way out. So, let's see. That's probably about as fast as it ever needs to go, right? Yeah. So let the detached work its way out and let the dynamic gradually drop as you continue to practice that. Okay, so first we're trying to build in an equal attack on all of the notes first. Now, as you practice that, if you do continue to find... Is it Rhodesy? I'm looking for a Poco crash. I'm not seeing a tempo change. And I know how fast the previous section is. I don't know. If you find that even after you've done this practice, that there are still a couple notes like that slow, if you find that there are still some notes, okay, if you find that there are still some notes as you do that, I guess this is another opportunity to say, learn the phrase and surpass the tempo you need and be able to play it evenly, right? Okay, now, as you've done all that other practice, and if there are still notes that are going, something like that, where they're popping out and we don't intend them to. Do the opposite. Especially if it's in the same place all the time, where we're having a note that's accented and we don't intend it to be there. If that happens on the same pitch and with the same finger, take a little time away from tempo. Let's say it happens with 5. And play it extra quietly, but making full connection with the bottom of the key. This is almost like the idea of ghosting a note, where we would not play it, slightly depress the key, but not play it. Sometimes we can use that technique to play very fast. Here, if it's slower, so both times 5 was supposed to articulate, I took some extra time and I made sure to place 5 so that it sounds, but as quiet as I possibly can. I didn't get there. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else that we can do. If you find that it's after a shift in hand position, for example, the 2 that crosses over here, if 2 is being accented, or when the thumb crosses under the hand, like that, I would pay some special attention to your wrist position. So when 2 plays, is the wrist really high, for example? And are we, without intending it, are we making it too easy to put more weight into that note because of how we're addressing it technically? So can we keep the wrist a little lower? Not depressed, just in line, so that when we cross, it's not coming up, if it is. On the other side of that, are we, without realizing it, dropping into the thumb, for example? And we want to take care in the same way that the wrist is quiet, meaning it's not doing a lot of movement. So can we play all of that without the wrist doing anything like this for a cross or for a thumb falling in? I picked those fingers because I think those are usually the common culprits, like 5 not wanting to articulate, or if we're rotating into 5, it articulates way too much because we're not controlling the rotation well enough, and or where we use a finger cross over the hand or a thumb tuck under the hand, that the wrist goes too high, and all of a sudden we're putting way too much. It's way too easy to transfer energy to the bottom of the key. And we don't want to keep that wrist position and just try to play lighter, because that will turn inconsistent. Where sometimes the wrist will come up and we'll try to play and the finger won't engage the bottom of the key. So focus on a quieter wrist. That is, I would try those out, Ruslan, and see how those help. But also be sure, go back to really striking each of those and striking them evenly. All the same dynamic. Yes. Okay, Ruslan, I hope that helps. All right. Let me see here. So I see, Seth, you have a question. I think, did I get to everybody else's earlier? I think I did. I think I did. If I didn't, if I missed your question, please drop it again. Ruslan, great to hear. All right. Yeah, if I missed a question, please drop it in the chat again. I don't intend to miss. But I'm going to jump over to Seth's. And then the plan is, Seth, once I answer your question, I need to answer Nathaniel's that he emailed me. And we'll all have a second to talk about Czerny at the end of the stream today. So, see, Seth, you said, what do you do if you keep consistently making the same rhythmic mistakes whenever you play a piece, unless you're using a metronome? Let's see. And Alexis, you said, listening to the piece. And Seth, you said that doesn't help. And you have to play it under tempo. Okay. Seth, I would, if we've got a very small section, like a measure that we're messing up, and it's the same measure repeatedly, take that measure and take it at a tempo that we can play, and like you said, start with the metronome. Okay. So we know, based on what I'm reading here, you know that when you use a metronome, we're going to get the rhythm correct, and we're going to get it right. Start with that metronome, start playing it, and do many repetitions of just a small section. And be sure that you leave a couple seconds between each repetition. So if you can count to like 2 or 3 every time you start over again, it helps the mind reset and make the next repetition just as impactful as the first one. So we want to do a handful of repetitions. Do them at your slow tempo, where it's going to be correct with the metronome. Before you turn the metronome off, start to speed up the tempo and incrementally speed your tempo up until hopefully we can reach performance tempo. And we're doing this by, I usually choose like either 4 beats per minute or 5 beats per minute at a time. So just gradually increasing our tempo little by little by little, so that each jump in tempo almost doesn't feel any different than where we came from. And as we do that, the metronome is still on. As we do that, continue to, well, we're still making sure we're playing the right rhythm, right? Okay, hopefully, can we get all the way to the point with metronome that we're playing it at performance tempo or at our desired tempo? Seth, if you don't have an inner pulse, that's probably just because we haven't done enough counting of it and feeling it. We haven't practiced feeling that pulse well enough yet. And so we can use a metronome. If you don't have a problem keeping with the metronome, you have an inner sense of pulse. If you couldn't play with the metronome while it ticks away and that's going on, then we have a different issue, right? I like to tell people, if you can walk and you can keep the same pace while you walk down a path or down the street, down the sidewalk, around your house, if you can step and take steps in the same rhythm, you have an inner sense of pulse. If you can run and you can go running and exercise and you can keep the same cadence, you have an inner sense of pulse. If you can sit at the kitchen table and tap and keep it consistent, you have an inner sense of pulse. John, that's great. Yes. The other thing that I like to do with students that have, if we have trouble feeling or physically expressing pulse that we hear, is I will teach conducting patterns. Because conducting patterns are movement of the body through space, which is really what playing the piano is. So can we conduct and keep in time while we move a 4-beat pattern? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we conduct that and keep it going? Can you conduct it with the metronome? So we're hitting It's called the ictus at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. And can those be precisely lined up with a metronome? If you can do that, your intersensitive pulse is pretty good. We want to combine that, and this is going back to what I was talking about earlier. We want to combine that with building better muscle memory as we tempo ladder. Yes, as we gradually increase our tempo, 4 beats a minute and 4 beats a minute and 4 beats a minute, we are continuing to build muscle memory of playing it the right way at all sorts of different tempos, starting with one that we're very confident with, and then moving up to something that is more challenging. The ultimate goal is that we can reach, as we've done all of these tempo ladders, it might not happen all in one day, but give it a week or two or something, and as we reach the top, as we reach the tempo that we desire, we are going to, it's not going to feel any different anymore than playing at our slow practice tempo. It's going to feel the same. And all the while, we've still been training our ear in these incrementally faster tempos to continue to hear the right rhythm. Now, hopefully, by the time you truly do that, you'll probably have done hundreds or thousands of repetitions. That's not, I hope that doesn't scare anybody. But if it's only, a 4-second or a 5-second long segment, it doesn't take that long to do 1,000 repetitions over a matter of days or a week. It doesn't take all that much time each day. There is so much physical execution that has happened that the ear and the hands now, it's like they instinctively know the right thing to do. Where you don't have to jump from your slow metronome tempo to performance tempo and hope that there is something that's going to stay connected between the two, right? We have bridged the entire gap in 2 ways, with our ear and with the playing mechanism. If it still falls apart here and there at the high tempo, that's fine. Take it down a few notches. Now we have this entire ladder, right, that we can cross, that we can traverse. Take it down a few notches until we can find the tempo that works again. One unrelated thing, because I think that kind of encapsulates the whole method that I'm trying to teach here. But one unrelated thing is, can you speak or sing the rhythm correctly as well? Because if we can speak or sing it, we're going to be able to correctly play it. If we can't speak or sing it back without playing, it is very unlikely we're going to end up playing the right thing. So if it's, I don't know, an eighth, a dotted eighth and a 16th and 2 16ths and an eighth. So da, 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 da. Yeah, that would be that rhythm. Ba, da, 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 da. Can we repeat that? Can we consistently get it right with the voice? Because if we can do it with the voice, we're actually feeling it and understanding it with our body. And then we can play it at the piano as well, because we're just matching those up. Okay, Seth, give that a try and let us know how that goes for you. Have patience as you go through it. Yes, and don't try to jump from a slow practice tempo up to your final one. Build this ladder that is 2 beats a minute, 4 beats a minute at a time. That goes all the way. Okay. We have to talk about Czerny, and then we're going to call it a day. So Nathaniel had a question about Czerny, Opus 849. Oh, number 11. Here it is. Okay, number 11. So this opus, we're going to spend a little time talking about this before we wrap up, but yeah, I'll just point out a few things. The tempo mark and the metronome marking. We're going to come back to that. We're not going to take that tempo to start with. Nathaniel's question wasn't about the scales, actually. It was about executing the left hand. So really, this exercise for most people is about fluency in scale passages. That was that first line, right hand. Nathaniel's question revolved around the left hand because he's having trouble connecting the first note. Here we go. First note to the second, and then playing staccato. So, and this is the same pattern. It continues bar after bar after bar for the entire piece. The first thing, Nathaniel, that I want to point out to you is that unfortunately, it's a little more difficult than you are currently describing it, because this first note isn't just an eighth note that is connected to the next, followed by staccato. It's not this. But check that first note out again. The first note is a dotted eighth, which means it is sustained for the first main beat, or these 3 eighth notes. The G is held for the duration. At some point, it needs to lift so we can restrike it again. Okay. Oh, I almost lost a little connection there. John, Czerny whole beat. Yeah. Well, yeah. We will see. I'm sorry. Let me plug back in. I think we've been working so hard today that my iPad doesn't want to stay on for us. Let's see if that reconnects. Christopher, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. So, first thing, Nathaniel, is we have to hold the G down. All of these beats get held. The first note is held for the duration. Even here. So that is a little even more challenging than just a simple connection followed by staccato. Okay, now let's talk about executing that. First, Nathaniel, when you play the first note, are we nice and relaxed? Ictus, thanks, Christopher. Nathaniel, when we play that first note, are you nice and relaxed? Where the only thing, there's very little keeping the key down. We're not continuing to push into the key. We're not bearing down on the key. We're not trying to run it through the bottom of the key bed. It's just nice and light. So after we play, can you take your other hand and lift it off without any problem? Because the only thing holding the finger down is just enough weight to keep the key depressed. Just enough weight to keep the key depressed. It's as if you tried to silently strike this note. That much weight, that's all we need to keep the key depressed. That's the first part. So on each of these, you might try practicing without these staccatos. And can that fifth finger be light enough that it's easy to release? Do not worry about the dynamic. Just forget that it even says forte. Okay? The studies in virtuosity are usually about lightness first, not playing very forcefully and aggressively. So first we need to accomplish the light part of this. Okay, now, after we've done that, when we need to hold, you said your teacher is not a fan, or at least not, you haven't seen yet that they're a fan of rotation. Rotation around 5 would be one of my primary ways to teach this, because it makes it really easy to play lightly and release that staccato, because 5 just holds as an anchor. I think you can see that. Yes? If your teacher is not happy with that, and that's not okay, and they want to work more on doing this with fingers, then I still wouldn't do it only with fingers. I would use a vertical wrist motion. So instead of a rotational motion of the forearm around the fifth finger, like this, instead of that, we're going to hold 5, and I'm going to drop the wrist in. This is going to, invariably, it's going to be slower. We're not going to be able to speed it up as much. But it does work more on this vertical style of playing. And if that aligns with your teacher's methods, then great. This is another way to accomplish playing these measures. This whole time, 5 should still be able to lift off. Yes? Here's another exercise you can try that's related to the piece. If we take the same triad and we just play 5 and we try with fingers to articulate 3 and 1 and 3 and 1. So I'm holding 5, playing with 3, 1, 3, 1, but 5 is still down. Can we do that again without having too much force into the key after the key strike? You could do this with all of the chord shapes. Yes? So we're still working staccato, and we're working staccato more with fingers. And then we can combine maybe all 3 of these ideas. So there's been finger staccato, there's been staccato and strike and staccato with wrist motion, vertical wrist motion, and there's also rotational wrist motion. And I think now between these 2, you've seen it overhead and from the side. So hopefully that helps out with these. That was the crux of Nathaniel's question about this. Now, let's have a quick talk about Czerny in general. So I said this is from Opus 849. Oh, John, I've got to respond to this. Yes, I've heard about that. I've also heard, so John, you said your teacher balanced 2 pencils on your wrists and said, don't drop them. Yeah, that has produced a lot of pianists that have injuries or that have dealt with injuries. Because in order to not drop whatever it is our wrist is holding, we end up having to play with a lot of tension. And it doesn't really link to, you don't really see any of the great pianists play that way. Some of the greats of the past, let's say the golden age, they might use less rotation, but they're not static like that. One of my teachers used to quote, I can't remember who it was that he was around, but it was a teacher that had him balance a quarter on the top of the wrist and said, don't drop it. Similar idea, and very bad. And he never taught that to his students. So whether or not you're a part of the Taubman school or adjacent to it and use rotation or don't like it, there is very little piano technique that is healthy that is static. I spend a lot of time on the channel talking about that, about staying in motion and allowing the wrist and the arm to keep everything going and to keep the machine moving. So, yeah. John, I just had to respond to that. Let's talk a little bit about the tempo for this. And I don't know what tempo Nathaniel is taking. The score says dotted quarter equals 66. That is highly unlikely that you will ever, 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 ever hear somebody play this that fast. I will show you what that sounds like in just a minute. But Nathaniel, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say for an intermediate pianist, which is usually where these Czerny exercises are assigned when we're in intermediate level, a good tempo, one that would be very accepted at exams and such, would be 8th note. There we go. 8th note equals 76. That's this tempo. And you'll hear most students play this at this tempo. Okay. That's great. If you'd like more of a challenge, or if you'd like to learn this piece yourself, this exercise yourself, or you want the benefits from it, or you've learned it in the past and you want to continue working on it, there's no reason you have to stick with a tempo like that. So let me give you a couple tempo suggestions that I think go with a variety of different levels. So we're going to call 76 an intermediate tempo. Now this same piece, let's say an advanced student, approximately RCM like 9-10 level, playing equivalent repertoire to like Debussy's Clair de Lune. Eighth note equals 120. Okay, that's good. Now let's say, we'll call that advanced. Someone who has finished a degree in classical piano, or an equivalent thereof, probably something like this. Notice we actually still haven't achieved a dotted quarter equals 66. If you want to find out the dotted quarter equivalent, take each of these numbers I'm writing down and divide it by 3. You'll get the dotted quarter equivalent. This, what do we call this? I'm going to use BM under this because those are the designations for the degree, a Bachelor's of Music. Okay, so if you finished a degree, you should be able to play this at 160. Okay. Now, if you want a true challenge at that point and beyond, we can take 66 and multiply it by 3 to get 198. So that would be the 8th note equals 198. John, I love that. You said you start Czerny at half speed, learn a few, and then work up to a reasonable speed. I think that's great. If you want to play at the marking given on the page, we're not going to talk about whether it's what Czerny meant or not today. But if you want to try for that marking on the page, I don't think I've ever actually heard anybody play the Czerny exercises at full tempo. They're usually off by at least 10% under, even when you hear the occasional very, very fine pianist play one of these. Here is 198. This wouldn't be anything you'd have a chance of attaining. I'm bringing this up because these exercises are always given to intermediate pianists. A lot of Czerny is given to like some beginner, some intermediate, some advanced, and students. Yet it reminds me, and when I saw this, it reminded me of the video I did about Burgmüller's Opus 100, in that you never see you, Antonio. Thanks so much. And that you never actually hear those pieces performed at the beats per minute that are listed, unless you get the random concert artist that actually plays it as a demonstration for something, and you hear them somewhere. But it's super rare. And my point is, this is another example, and all of Czerny, most of Czerny, is a great example of pieces that after you've learned them at whatever level that you did when you started, you can always go back and revisit and continue to work the tempo faster and faster. Perhaps a true concert artist that practices this would be able to play this piece, this exercise at 8th note equals 198, or dotted quarter equals 66. So that's this tempo. You get the idea. It's a great study of scales, really is. And if your technique is truly wonderful, you'll have a chance at playing that marking on the page. Otherwise, I hope people most of the time just don't pay attention to it. That's why I wanted to take the time to go through and actually list out some tempos and the goals and what level kind of experience I think you should have to attempt to attain some of those tempi. And this one in particular, you can extrapolate that for other Czerny exercises if you'd like to. But there's no sense in playing through. If your scale, if it's not crystal clear, and then we have notes popping in and out, or it's just a mess, slow it down. And after it works, add in the dynamics of forte with the crescendo to the I usually call these subito forte, not sforzandi. Right? Okay. Whew. It's been a great stream. I think we have come to the end today. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to Rhodesy for starting us off with a new composition. Nancy, I see your comment about Taubman. That's great to be listening while you paint. Awesome. Awesome. John, I'm so glad that you joined us today. I haven't seen you before. So if you've been here before, well, welcome back. And if you haven't been here before, welcome for the first time. And I hope to see you again. For everybody, Alexis, I keep feeling so bad that we don't get to your octaves. We need to start off with that. So one of these days, Alexis, actually, do you have your Mendelssohn in a place where you could send in a video? I hope Alexis is still here. Do you have your Mendelssohn in a place where you could send a video and we could chat about it? Because that would make sure that we talk about it. Because I really would love to work on that with you. Yes, as Nancy said, please click the thumbs up button if you haven't. Alexis, Alexis, well, perfect. Send over the introduction. Send over the introduction, please, please, please. And we can chat about that. And then I will give you some practice tips about the octaves in the rondo, that true rondo, both in the middle and at the very end. Does that sound good? And even if you don't, I really just need to make sure that I start with talking about that the next time you're on a stream, Alexis. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Let me just check the calendar. We are doing this again in 2 weeks. It'll be August. Oh my goodness. It'll be August 7th when we have the next stream. I will look forward to seeing, hopefully, many of you or all of you in August. And practice smarter, not harder. And hopefully you learned a little bit about doing that today. And we can continue doing that in the next stream in a couple weeks. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the supers today as well. Gosh, thank you. Really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for being here and being so active in the chat. It's really great to have, it actually feels like, we're talking to one another and it's not just me sitting in a room alone with a camera, which is what it is. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of this week. Have a great next week. See you August 7th. Take care.